There is a small apartment entryway in Nagoya where every single day a pair of shoes gets set down, turned around, and lined up neatly facing the door, ready for the next time they're needed. It takes under 2 seconds. No one taught this as a rule written on paper. It's just what happens automatically. The same way you might wipe your feet without thinking about it. Meanwhile, somewhere else right now, someone kicks their shoes off in 2 different directions, walks past them without a glance, and doesn't think about them again until they're tripping over them on the way out the door tomorrow morning. Neither person considers this a big deal. And yet, if you looked closely at everything else in these 2 people's days, you'd start noticing a pattern, small, 2-second habits repeated so consistently that they quietly shape everything from how calm a home feels to how trusted a person becomes. What if the difference between a chaotic day and a smooth one has almost nothing to do with big decisions, and almost everything to do with 8 tiny habits so small they barely register as habits at all? By the end of this video, you will know exactly what those 8 habits are and why even one of them, practiced consistently, can noticeably change how your days feel. Before we get into the habits themselves, we need to address an assumption most people carry about meaningful change. The assumption is this: real improvement requires big, deliberate effort, a new routine, a new system, a new commitment tracked and measured. This feels true because big changes are visible and satisfying to plan. But it quietly ignores the fact that most of a day isn't made up of big moments at all. It's made up of dozens of 2-second actions repeated without thought, and those small repeated actions are doing far more shaping of a life than any occasional big decision ever could. This is the piece almost every self-improvement framework quietly skips. The real Japanese term, Kutsuwosoroeru, aligning one's shoes, the small habit of turning shoes around and lining them up neatly the moment they're removed at an entryway. The practice. It takes under 2 seconds, requires no planning, and is done the same way every single time, regardless of how tired or rushed the moment is. The scientific validation. Researchers studying environmental psychology have found that small, consistently maintained order at a transition point, like a doorway, measurably reduces stress hormones upon returning home because the brain reads a tidy threshold as a signal of control over one's space, even when nothing else has changed. The second habit concerns how a greeting is delivered. The real Japanese term, aisatsu, a proper greeting, one given with eye contact, a clear voice, and a slight pause, rather than mumbled in passing. The practice, whether arriving at work, entering a shop, or passing a neighbor, a full, unhurried greeting is offered rather than an abbreviated nod. The scientific validation. Social psychologists studying first impressions have found that a complete, unrushed greeting measurably increases perceived trustworthiness and warmth compared to a rushed or partial one, an effect that compounds significantly over repeated daily interactions with the same people. The third habit is about protecting a small buffer of time. The real Japanese term, jikan genshu, strict timekeeping, specifically arriving a few minutes before an agreed time rather than exactly on it. The practice. Appointments, meetings, and casual meetups are approached with a built-in cushion, arriving early enough to settle in rather than rushing in right at the moment something begins. The scientific validation, or organizational behavior research, has found that consistently arriving slightly early is linked to lower measured cortisol at the start of tasks, because the nervous system isn't forced into a last-second sprint before it needs to perform. The fourth habit involves how objects are cared for, not replaced. The real Japanese term, mono wo taisetsu ni suru, treating things as precious, a small daily habit of wiping down, repairing, or maintaining an object, rather than letting it slowly degrade toward disposal. The practice. A pair of shoes gets a quick wipe before being put away. A tool gets returned clean rather than dirty. The action takes seconds, but is done without exception. The scientific validation. Consumer psychology research has found that the physical act of maintaining an object increases a person's reported attachment and satisfaction with it substantially, an effect strong enough to measurably reduce unnecessary replacement purchases over time. The fifth habit is about what's added to an ordinary exchange. The real Japanese term, hitokoto soeru, adding one small extra word, a brief phrase of appreciation or acknowledgement tacked onto an otherwise routine interaction. The practice. Rather than a transactional thanks delivered automatically, one small additional sentence is offered, specific and brief. That was helpful, or I appreciate you checking. The scientific validation. Research on workplace relationships has found that brief, specific verbal acknowledgement measurably increases a colleague's willingness to help again in the future, far more than generic thanks, despite costing only a few additional seconds to deliver. The sixth habit concerns facial expression during ordinary, non-emotional moments. The real Japanese term comes from the old proverb, warau kado ni fuku kataru. Fortune comes to the home that laughs, encouraging a light, easy expression as a small daily default, rather than a neutral or strained one. The practice. Rather than defaulting to a flat or tense expression during routine tasks, a slightly relaxed, easy expression is maintained. Not forced cheerfulness, just an absence of unnecessary tension held in the face. The scientific validation. Facial feedback research has found that even subtle relaxation of facial muscles during neutral tasks is associated with measurably lower reported stress, because facial tension and emotional tension are more linked in both directions than most people assume. The seventh habit is about the small ritual of wrapping and reusing. The real Japanese term furoshiki, a traditional cloth used to wrap and carry items instead of single-use bags or packaging. The practice. An ordinary cloth, folded and knotted a specific way, becomes the container for a lunch, a gift, or a small parcel, reused indefinitely rather than discarded after one use. The scientific validation. Behavioral sustainability research has found that visible, hands-on reuse rituals like this one build measurably stronger long-term waste reduction habits than passive recycling, because the action itself, not just the outcome, reinforces the underlying value each time it's repeated. The eighth and final habit is the simplest, and it happens the moment a task ends. The real Japanese term, atokatazuke, tidying up immediately afterward, closing out an activity by returning its space to order before moving to the next thing. The practice. Dishes are washed right after a meal. Tools are put back the moment a project pauses. A workspace is cleared before leaving it, rather than deferring the tidying to some later, less busy moment that rarely comes. The scientific validation. Studies on task switching and environmental clutter have found that an immediately reset space reduces cognitive load when returning to it later, because an ordered environment requires no additional mental processing before the next task can begin. As you've seen, a massive difference in how your days feel doesn't require a massive change in what you do. It requires 8 tiny, repeatable habits, each one taking only seconds. Align your shoes with Kutsuwosoroeru. Greet fully with aisatsu. Arrive a few minutes early through jikan genshu. Care for your objects through mono wo taisetsu ni suru. Add one small word of appreciation through hitokoto soeru. Keep your expression light through warau kado ni fuku kitaru. Reuse deliberately through furoshiki. And close out cleanly through atoka. None of it requires more time in your day. It requires noticing the seconds you already have and using them slightly differently. If this changed the way you think about your own small daily habits, please like this video and subscribe so we can continue unlocking this kind of practical Japanese wisdom together. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 8 tiny habits are you going to start today? Leave it in the comments below. Until the next video.